The stars looked the same as they always did through the observation deck of the Celestial Archive. Dr. Taman stood with his hands behind his back, watching the endless darkness of space. He had spent 15 years studying dead civilizations, and today would be no different. Another artifact. Another mystery that would probably lead nowhere interesting. "Doctor, we're approaching the coordinates now," said Hyejin from her station. She was the best materials expert in the fleet, though she was young. Only 32 years old, but already she could identify any substance in the known galaxy just by looking at its molecular structure. Taman nodded and walked to the main view screen. There it was, a structure floating in the middle of nowhere, slowly spinning in the black void between star systems. It looked old, very old. The metal surface was covered in what appeared to be rust and damage from countless micrometeorite impacts. "What do you think?" asked Daehyun, the ship's quantum physicist. He adjusted his glasses and squinted at the screen. "Looks pretty basic to me." "Run a standard scan," Taman ordered. "Let's see what we're dealing with." The ship's computer hummed to life, sending waves of energy across the structure. Data began flooding the screens around the bridge. Hyejin frowned as she read the results. "It's made of iron and steel alloys," she said. "Very basic composition. The construction method appears to be welding, simple mechanical welding. I haven't seen this technique used in anything less than 3,000 years old." Ji-won, the junior researcher, leaned closer to her own screen. She was fresh out of the academy, only 2 years into her first deep space assignment. "The decay pattern seems odd, though," she said quietly. "Odd how?" Taman asked. "I'm not sure yet. Just a feeling." Minho, the council representative aboard the ship, laughed from his position near the back of the bridge. He was a tall alien with blue skin and 3 eyes, and he had made it clear from the start that he thought this mission was a waste of time. "A feeling," Minho said with clear mockery in his voice. "Perhaps we should base all our scientific conclusions on feelings from now on." Ji-won's face turned red, but she said nothing. Taman gave Minho a sharp look but decided not to start an argument. They had 3 more months together on this ship, and fighting with the council representative would only make life difficult. "Prepare the shuttle," Taman said. "Hyejin, Daehyun, you're with me. Ji-won, you'll monitor from here and run secondary analysis on anything we send back." The young researcher nodded, grateful to have something important to do despite Minho's dismissal. The shuttle detached from the Celestial Archive 30 minutes later. Taman sat in the pilot's seat while Hyejin and Daehyun checked their equipment in the back. The structure grew larger as they approached, and Taman could see more details now. It was roughly cylindrical, maybe 50 meters long and 20 meters wide. The surface was covered in panels that had been joined together with visible seams. The welding marks were clear and crude. Whoever built this had not been concerned with making it look pretty. "I'm reading no power signatures," Daehyun said. "Whatever this thing was, it's been dead for a long time." They docked at what appeared to be an airlock on the side of the structure. The mechanism was simple, almost primitive. Hyejin had to manually override the door using tools from their kit. Inside, the air was stale but breathable. Their suits detected no biological hazards. The interior matched the exterior in its simplicity. Plain metal walls, exposed pipes and conduits, lighting fixtures that no longer worked. Everything was functional, nothing decorative. It reminded Taman of ancient industrial facilities he had studied on various worlds. "This is pre-industrial technology," Hyejin said, running her scanner along the walls. "Maybe early space age. Whoever built this was just learning how to work in zero gravity." "Any idea what species?" Taman asked. "Not yet. No markings, no writing, no cultural indicators. Just bare metal and basic engineering." They moved through the structure slowly, cataloging everything they found. There were rooms that might have been crew quarters, though they were empty now. A larger space that could have been for storage. Everything was bolted down or welded in place, designed for a zero-gravity environment. Daehyun stopped at a junction where several corridors met. "You know what's strange?" he said. "There's no damage inside. The outside looks like it's been floating in space for millennia, but in here everything looks almost new." "Maybe it was better protected," Hyejin suggested. "The hull took all the damage from space debris and radiation." "Maybe," Daehyun said, but he didn't sound convinced. They spent 4 hours exploring the structure. Taman took samples of the metal, photographs of every room and corridor, measurements of every component they could find. By the time they returned to the shuttle, he felt confident in his initial assessment. It's a station or outpost of some kind, he told the others as they flew back to the Celestial Archive. Built by a civilization that had just developed basic space travel but hadn't yet mastered it. They probably built this, used it for a while, then abandoned it when they developed better technology. Or they went extinct, Hyejin added. That happens more often than not. Back on the ship, Taemin filed his initial report while the others processed their samples and data. Minho read the report and snorted. Another dead end, the council representative said. We should move on to more promising sites. We still need to complete the full analysis, Taemin replied. That will take at least a week. A week wasted on primitive junk, Minho muttered, but he didn't argue further. Ji-won worked late into the ship's night cycle, alone in the laboratory. She couldn't explain why, but something about the structure bothered her. She kept running the decay analysis over and over, comparing it to known patterns from other ancient artifacts. The external damage matched what she would expect from something floating in space for thousands of years. But when she looked at the molecular breakdown of the internal components, something didn't add up. The rate of decay was different, much different. She pulled up her reference databases and started cross-referencing. Hours passed. Coffee turned cold on her desk. And then she found it. The internal components weren't thousands of years old. They were barely 200 years old. Ji-won sat back in her chair staring at the screen. That couldn't be right. She must have made a mistake somewhere. She started the analysis again from the beginning, checking every calculation, verifying every assumption. The result was the same. The structure was designed to look ancient, but it wasn't. Someone had built something that appeared primitive and old, but was actually relatively recent. But why? What possible reason could anyone have for such deception? Ji-won saved her findings and tried to sleep, but questions kept spinning through her mind. Tomorrow she would show Taemin what she had found. Tomorrow everything would change. The holographic display filled Somin's office with soft blue light. The translated text floated in the air and everyone leaned forward to read it. Taemin read the first line and felt his breath catch in his throat. Construction log. Earth Orbital Defense Initiative. Station 7. Earth? Minho said, his three eyes widening. This was built by humans? Keep reading, Somin said quietly. The log continued. It was written in a straightforward style like a military report. The humans who built this structure had documented everything. The design philosophy, the construction methods, the reasoning behind every choice they made. And as Taemin read, he began to understand. The structure was built during what the log called the Silent Century. It was a period in human history that lasted from their first detection of alien signals until their official first contact with the Galactic Council. According to galactic records, humans had been a primitive species during most of that time, barely capable of leaving their own planet. The log told a different story. They knew about us, Daehyun said, reading over Taemin's shoulder. The humans knew about galactic civilization decades before first contact. They were listening, watching, learning. The log explained how human scientists had intercepted communications between various alien species. They had studied the languages, the technology, the social structures, and what they learned had terrified them. The galaxy was not a friendly place. Look at this entry, Hyejin said, pointing to a section of the log. They analyzed over 500 first contact scenarios between species. 70% ended in conflict. 40% ended in extinction of one or both species. The humans had made a decision. They would hide their true capabilities until they understood the galaxy better. They would appear primitive and non-threatening while secretly building their defenses. The structures like Station 7 were part of that defense. Built to look like early space-age technology, but actually containing the most advanced systems humans could develop, scattered throughout space in locations that seemed random but actually formed a network. It's brilliant, Ji-won said softly. If hostile aliens found these stations, they would dismiss them as junk. Not worth attacking, not worth studying. Just garbage left behind by a species that barely understood space travel. But they're actually watching posts, Taemin said, understanding dawning on him. Sensor platforms. Early warning systems. Somin activated another section of the hologram. More logs appeared, these ones containing technical specifications. The team spent hours reading through them. Each page revealed more of the deception, The crude welding marks that concealed perfect molecular bonds. The basic steel that hid advanced composite materials. The simple design that masked quantum-level engineering. Everything was intentional. They had a saying, Solomon said, translating another section. Hide sophistication within simplicity. Let others underestimate you until you understand if they're friend or enemy. Minho paced back and forth, clearly agitated. This changes everything we know about human history. The first contact report said they were surprised to meet us, confused, overwhelmed by the existence of aliens. They were acting, Yijin said. Humans are apparently very good at acting. The log contained entries about the first contact itself. Taman read them with growing amazement. The humans had known the council ships were coming weeks before they arrived. They had prepared their response carefully. They had chosen who would represent them, what technology to show, what questions to ask. Everything about humanity's introduction to galactic society had been calculated and controlled. There's more, Solomon said. She opened another file and new images appeared. Detailed scans of alien technology, ships, weapons, communication systems. Hundreds of pages of analysis. Where did they get this? Daehyun asked. The answer was in the log. Humans had been secretly recovering alien technology for years before first contact. Probe remains, crashed ships, debris from space battles. Anything that drifted into human-controlled space was studied, reverse-engineered, and added to their knowledge base. They were learning from us, Yejin said. While we thought they were primitive, they were studying everything we did. Every technology we used, every weakness we had. One entry made Taman's blood run cold. It was a tactical analysis of Galactic Council military capabilities. The humans had identified 17 different ways to disable Council warships using technology the Council didn't know humans possessed. Did they ever use any of this? Minho asked. According to the log, no, Somin said. It was all defensive planning. But the fact that they did this planning means they considered Council species potential threats. Can you blame them? Ji-won said. Based on what they observed, they had every reason to be cautious. The logs continued for hundreds of pages. Station 7 was just one piece of a much larger network. Humans had built dozens of these disguised platforms throughout nearby space. They had created stealth satellites that looked like space debris. They had developed weapons that appeared to be simple industrial tools. And they had done all of this while pretending to be a young, naive species just learning about the universe. How long have they maintained this deception? Taman asked. Solomon checked the dates. According to these logs, Station 7 was built 187 years ago. First contact happened 143 years ago. So they kept up the act for at least 44 years before revealing themselves. And how long after first contact did they maintain it? Yejin asked. The team looked at each other. That was the real question. When had humans stopped pretending? Or had they stopped at all? Their current technology level, Daehyun said slowly. Everything we know about human capabilities. Is any of it real? Or is it all still part of the deception? Nobody had an answer. Taman activated the communication system. I need to speak with Galactic Council Command. Immediately. The response came within hours. Council Command was sending a special investigation team. They wanted all data transferred to secure channels. They wanted the structure quarantined. And they wanted answers. What do we tell them? Hijin asked. The truth, Taman said. Everything we've found. This will cause a panic, Minho said. If other species learn that humans have been hiding their true capabilities for nearly 2 centuries, there will be demands for explanations, investigations, maybe worse. Maybe, Taman agreed. But we're scientists. We report what we discover. What the Council does with that information is up to them. Over the next week, more discoveries emerged. The team found additional hidden chambers in Station 7. Each one contained more information. More technology, more evidence of human sophistication hidden behind a mask of simplicity. Ji-won made perhaps the most disturbing discovery. She found logs of human observations of other species, not just council members, but dozens of civilizations throughout the galaxy. Humans had been watching everyone, cataloging their technologies, their tactics, their weaknesses. They've been preparing, Ji-won said to Taman, all this time. Preparing for scenarios where they might need to defend themselves against any species in the galaxy, or scenarios where they might need to attack. Minho added darkly, but Taman wasn't so sure. The more he read of the logs, the more he saw a pattern. Humans weren't preparing for conquest. They were preparing for survival. Every plan, every hidden weapon, every disguised station was defensive in nature. Humans had entered a dangerous galaxy full of species more advanced and more powerful than themselves. They had done what they needed to do to survive. They had been smart, cautious, and yes, deceptive. But could anyone really blame them for that? The investigation team arrived on the 13th day. With them came military analysts, intelligence officers, and a representative from the Council's High Command. They took over the Celestial Archive, restricting access to most areas and classifying much of the data, and they sent a message to Earth. The humans were invited to send a delegation to explain themselves. It was not phrased as a request. Kyung-ho arrived on the Celestial Archive 3 days after the Council sent their message to Earth. He was a military analyst, though his species rarely engaged in direct combat. Instead, they specialized in strategy and intelligence. His kind had 4 arms and eyes that could see into the infrared spectrum, useful for detecting heat signatures and hidden energy sources. "Where's the structure?" were his first words after boarding the ship. Taemin led him to the observation deck where they could see Station 7 floating in space. Kyung-ho studied it for a long moment, his 4 arms crossed in various positions that indicated deep thought. "It looks like garbage," Kyung-ho said finally. "That's the point," Taemin replied. "Show me everything you've found." For the next 2 days, Taemin and his team presented their findings. Kyung-ho listened without interrupting, taking notes on a device that projected holographic screens around him. When they finished, he sat in silence for several minutes. "How many of these structures did the humans build?" he asked. "We don't know," Taemin admitted. "The logs mention a network, but they don't specify how many stations exist." "Find out," Kyung-ho ordered. "Search every database. Look through all our exploration records. I want to know how many of these things are floating around out there." The team split up to tackle the massive task. Hyejin and Daehyun searched through astronomical surveys. Jiwon combed through reports from exploration vessels. Somin looked at historical records from various species. It took 6 days, but they found them, 47 structures in total. All cataloged in various databases as debris, ancient artifacts, or objects of minimal interest. All dismissed and ignored by dozens of different species over the past century and a half. 47, Kyung-ho repeated when Taemin showed him the list. 47 hidden observation posts scattered throughout explored space. "There might be more that we haven't found yet," Hyejin added. Kyung-ho's expression darkened. "Show me their locations." Jiwon pulled up a map of the galaxy. Red dots appeared, marking each discovered structure. At first, the pattern seemed random, but as Kyung-ho studied the map, his eyes widened. "They're not randomly placed," he said. "Look at this. Every major trade route has at least one station within scanning range. Every Council military installation has a station within 10 light years. Every species' homeworld has multiple stations in nearby systems." "They've been watching everything," Daehyun said quietly. "Not just watching," Kyung-ho replied. "Look at these stations here, here, and here." He pointed to 3 locations. These form a triangle around the Vortan homeworld. The Vortans were one of the most aggressive species in the galaxy during the human silent century. Taemin checked the historical records. Kyung-ho was right. The Vortans had conquered 7 different species during that time period. They had been powerful and dangerous. "The Vortans went quiet about 130 years ago," Kyung-ho continued. "They stopped expanding, stopped threatening their neighbors. Everyone assumed they had internal problems or resource issues. What if the humans did something? What could humans have done?" Minho asked. "They weren't even part of galactic society yet." "We don't know what they could have done," Kyung-ho said. "That's the problem. We don't know the extent of their capabilities then, and we certainly don't know now." Hyejin pulled up technical data from one of the other discovered structures. A Council exploration team had actually boarded it 15 years ago during a routine survey mission. They had dismissed it as worthless junk. "But look at this," Hyejin said, pointing to the scan data. "The Council team did a basic energy scan. There's a spike here, right when their ship approached. It's tiny, easy to miss, but it's there. The station detected them," Daehyun said, "and probably scanned them, analyzed them, recorded them, and sent that data somewhere." Kyung-ho finished. "These aren't just passive observation posts. They're active defense nodes. The implications were staggering. For over a century, Humans had been secretly monitoring everyone in the galaxy. They knew where every ship traveled, where every military base was located, what technology each species used. "We need to find out if these systems are still active," Kyung-ho said. "And we need to find out what else they can do." Taemin took a team back to Station 7. This time they brought military-grade scanning equipment and authorization to access the hidden control systems. Somin had made progress on translating the mathematical language, and she guided them through activating various functions. The station came to life slowly. Lights flickered on throughout the structure. Screens illuminated in the hidden chambers, and data began flowing. "It's connecting to something," Daehyun said, watching his instruments. "There's a signal going out, very weak. Spread spectrum across multiple frequencies. Almost impossible to detect unless you know what to look for." "Can you trace it?" Kyung-ho asked. "Give me a moment." Daehyun worked his controls, following the signal as it bounced through space. "It's going to..." Multiple destinations. Other stations in the network. "They're all talking to each other. And they're still active after all this time," Hijin said. "Whatever power source they're using, it's incredibly efficient." Kyung-ho moved to the main control panel. With Somin's help, he began accessing different systems. The station had sensors that could detect ships at ranges far beyond standard Council technology. It had passive scanning that couldn't be detected. It had processing power that could analyze threats and predict movement patterns, and it had weapons. "These aren't just observation posts," Kyung-ho said grimly. "Look at this. Missile tubes, disguised as structural supports, energy weapons hidden in what appear to be communication arrays. This station could take out a small fleet. Could it take out a Council warship?" Minho asked. Kyung-ho studied the specifications. "Yes," he said finally, easily. "And the warship would never see it coming because they would dismiss this station as worthless debris." The team stood in horrified silence. Then Ji-won spoke up. "There's another file here," she said. "Something Somin hasn't translated yet." Somin came over and examined the symbols. Her expression changed as she worked through the translation. "It's an activation protocol," she said. "Instructions for what happens if certain conditions are met." "What conditions?" Taemin asked. "If any station in the network detects hostile actions against Earth or human assets. If multiple stations detect Council military movements toward human space. If any station is attacked or destroyed. What happens then?" Kyung-ho demanded. Somin read further. "The entire network activates. All stations switch from passive observation to active defense. They begin coordinating with each other and with Earth. The protocol calls it Operation Guardian. An automated defense system," Hyejin said, "spanning the entire explored galaxy." "Not just defense," Daehyun corrected, reading another section. "Look at this. If the threat is severe enough, the stations can act offensively. They're designed to target supply lines, communication hubs, military installations. They're not powerful enough to win a war by themselves, but they could cripple any species' ability to wage war." Kyung-ho grabbed his communication device. "I need to report this to High Command immediately." But before he could send the message, Ji-won made another discovery. "Dr. Taemin," she said urgently. "You need to see this. Right now." They gathered around her screen. She had accessed another set of files. Ones hidden even deeper in the system than the others. And what those files contained changed everything again. "These are surveillance records," Ji-won explained. "From the time period right before first contact. The stations were monitoring Council activities in this sector. And they recorded something." She played the data. It showed 3 different Council species. The Vortans, the Kelthinians, the Drax. All of them had sent military fleets toward human space during the years before first contact. "They were planning invasions," Taemin said. "All 3 of them," Ji-won confirmed. "Independently. They had each identified Earth as a primitive world with resources worth taking." "What happened?" Minho asked. "Why didn't they attack?" Ji-won pulled up more data. The Vortan fleet experienced massive system failures. Engines shut down. Weapons malfunctioned. They had to turn back. The Kelthinian fleet had similar problems, and the Drax fleet encountered an unexplained minefield that destroyed 6 ships. "The humans sabotaged them," Hyejin said. "The humans knew they were coming and stopped them." Without ever revealing themselves, Daehyun added, "These species probably never even knew why their invasions failed." Kyung-ho sat down heavily. His forearms hung limply at his sides. Humans prevented 3 separate invasions before anyone even knew they existed. They've been protecting themselves while pretending to be helpless newcomers to galactic society. And they're still doing it, Taman said. These stations are still active, still watching, still ready to defend Earth if necessary. The question hung in the air, unspoken but understood by everyone. What else were humans hiding? What other capabilities did they have? And most importantly, could they be trusted? The human delegation will be here in 5 days, Kyung-ho said. We'll get our answers then. The human ship arrived exactly on schedule. It was a diplomatic vessel, sleek and modern, with the Earth government seal displayed prominently on its hull. Nothing about it looked threatening. Nothing about it looked particularly advanced compared to other council vessels. But now Taman knew better than to trust appearances. 2 humans disembarked at the docking bay. The first was a woman named Borum. She was in her 50s with short gray hair and the confident posture of someone who had spent years in zero-gravity environments. Her title was Chief Engineer of the Orbital Defense Initiative. The second was a man named Chan-woo. He was younger, perhaps 40, with an easy smile and diplomatic credentials. But Taman noticed how his eyes constantly scanned the room, cataloging everything and everyone. Thank you for coming, Kyung-ho said formally. We have many questions. I'm sure you do, Boram replied. Her voice was calm and steady. We're prepared to answer them. They gathered in the main conference room. The entire science team was there, along with Kyung-ho, Min-ho, and several other council representatives who had arrived over the past few days. The room was crowded and tense. Kyung-ho started the meeting by presenting everything they had discovered. Station 7, the network of hidden platforms, the surveillance data, the defensive capabilities, the evidence of prevented invasions. He spoke for over an hour, laying out each piece of evidence methodically. Boram and Chan-woo listened without interrupting. When Kyung-ho finished, Boram leaned forward. Everything you've discovered is true, she said simply. We did build those stations. We did monitor galactic activity. We did stop those invasion fleets. And yes, we've been keeping our true capabilities hidden. The bluntness of her admission shocked the room into silence. Minho recovered first. Why? He demanded. Why the deception? Why hide for so long? Chan-woo took this question. Because we didn't know if we could trust you, he said. Any of you. When we first detected alien signals, we were excited, thrilled. The idea of not being alone in the universe was incredible. But then we listened, really listened, and we learned. He activated a holographic display. Images appeared showing various first contact scenarios throughout galactic history. We analyzed 517 cases of species making first contact with the Galactic Council or with each other, Chan-woo continued. 71% involved conflict. 43% ended with one or both species being destroyed or subjugated. Those are terrible odds. But the Council promotes peace, one of the representatives argued. The Council promotes peace among its members, Boram corrected. But new species? Unproven species? They're vulnerable. We watched 3 different civilizations get absorbed and exploited in the 20 years before we revealed ourselves. Their resources taken. Their people made subordinate. All technically legal under council law. We also saw this, Chan-woo added, pulling up more data. The surveillance records Ji-won had discovered. 3 invasion fleets heading toward Earth. You stopped them, Kyung-ho said. We did, Boram confirmed. The Vortans, Kelthinians, and Drax all saw Earth as an easy target. A primitive world full of resources. They planned to take what they wanted and enslave or eliminate anyone who resisted. How did you stop them without revealing yourselves? Taman asked. Boram smiled slightly. Carefully. The Vortan fleet experienced what appeared to be cascading system failures. Really, we had infiltrated their ships months earlier with nanoscale devices that waited for the right moment to activate. The Kelthinian fleet had similar problems. And the Drax encountered mines that we had secretly placed after tracking their scout ships. You committed acts of war, Min-ho said. We committed acts of self-defense, Chan-woo replied firmly, against species that intended to invade and conquer us. They never knew we existed, never knew we had stopped them. They blamed their failures on bad luck and technical problems, and we survived. What about after first contact? Kyung-ho asked. You revealed yourselves to the council. You joined Galactic Society. Why continue the deception then? Because nothing had changed, Boram said. We were still the new species. Still unproven. Still vulnerable. Do you think those 3 species stopped being dangerous just because we joined the council? Do you think other species wouldn't see us as potential targets? She pulled up more data, intelligence reports, military assessments, threat analyses. Even after joining the council, we detected 7 different plots against human interests, 2 attempted economic manipulations designed to make us dependent on other species, 3 espionage operations trying to steal human technology, and 2 serious discussions about military action to contain the human threat. The council representatives shifted uncomfortably. Some of them looked away. We maintained our hidden network because we needed to, Chanwu said. We needed to know what was happening. We needed to be able to defend ourselves. We needed to survive. But this violates council law, one representative argued. Covert surveillance, hidden weapons, undeclared military assets, does it? Chanwu asked mildly. Because when we reviewed council law very carefully, we found something interesting. There's no law against building defensive platforms in unclaimed space. No law against making those platforms look less advanced than they are. No law against monitoring public transmissions and ship movements. The weapons, Minho started, are defensive, Borum interrupted. Every weapon system we built was designed to protect human assets and allies. Not to conquer. Not to expand. To protect. Show me the council law that forbids species from building defenses. There was a long silence. Finally, Kyung-ho spoke. You make a fair point about survival, but the question remains, can we trust you? How do we know this network is purely defensive? How do we know you're not planning conquest while pretending to be peaceful? Borum stood up and walked to the window overlooking Station 7. You can't know, she said honestly. Just like we couldn't know if you were trustworthy when we first detected your existence. Trust has to be earned. It takes time. But I can tell you this, Chanwu added. Humans have been part of the Galactic Council for 143 years. In that time, have we ever attacked another species without provocation? Have we seized territory that wasn't ours? Have we enslaved or exploited others? No, Kyung-ho admitted. We fought when attacked. We've defended our allies. We've contributed to council military operations against pirates and criminals. But we've never been the aggressors. Our actions speak for themselves. Jiwon, who had been quiet throughout the meeting, finally spoke up. The stations, she said. Station 7 specifically. It was designed to be discovered, wasn't it? Borum turned to her and smiled. Very perceptive. Yes, it was. I don't understand, Taemin said. We knew eventually someone would find these stations and figure out what they really were, Borum explained. We couldn't hide forever, so we made sure that when someone did find them, they would find evidence of our reasoning. The surveillance data showing the invasion fleets, the defensive protocols, the evidence that we were protecting ourselves, not plotting against others. Station 7 was a test, Chanwu said. A test of how you would react. Would you investigate peacefully and try to understand? Or would you immediately assume the worst and respond with hostility? And we passed? Taemin asked. You're still investigating, Borum said. Still asking questions. Still trying to understand. That's exactly what we hoped for. Kyung-ho crossed his forearms, thinking hard. What happens now? He asked. That's up to you, Chanwu said. We've been honest about what we've done and why. We're willing to work with the council to establish better trust. We can share more information about our capabilities. We can integrate our defensive network with council security systems. But, Borum added, we won't dismantle our defenses. We won't leave ourselves vulnerable. And we won't apologize for surviving. More silence. Then Taemin stood up. I've spent 15 years studying extinct civilizations, he said. Species that trusted too quickly. Species that weren't cautious enough. Species that failed to prepare for threats. They're all gone now. Maybe humans are paranoid. Maybe they're overly cautious. But they're not extinct. He looked at the council representatives. Humans did what they had to do to survive in a dangerous galaxy. Can we really fault them for that? Haven't all our species done similar things? Minho spoke up reluctantly. My species hit our industrial capacity for 60 years after joining the council. We were afraid others would see us as an economic threat. Another representative nodded. My people concealed our population numbers. We made ourselves seem smaller and weaker than we were. We all have secrets, Kyung-ho said slowly. Humans just have better secrets than most. Over the next 3 days, negotiations continued. Borum and Chanwu shared detailed information about the defensive network. Not everything, but enough to demonstrate good faith. In return, The council agreed to formally recognize the stations as legitimate defensive assets. More importantly, they agreed to integrate human intelligence gathering with council security. The humans had been watching for threats for over a century. That knowledge could benefit everyone. Jiwan was offered a position working with Borum's team, studying the integration of different engineering philosophies. She accepted immediately. Taemin looked at Jiwan's data for the third time, then looked at her. The young researcher stood nervously on the other side of his desk, waiting for him to say something. Anything. "You're certain about this?" he finally asked. "I ran the analysis 7 times, Jiwan said. "I checked every calculation. The internal components are approximately 200 years old, give or take 20 years. The external damage is authentic, but it's been accelerated somehow." "Accelerated damage," Taemin repeated slowly. "You're saying someone made this structure look older than it really is?" "Yes, Doctor." Taemin leaned back in his chair and rubbed his temples. In 15 years of studying ancient civilizations, he had never encountered anything like this. Deception on this scale made no sense. What civilization would go to such effort to disguise the age of a simple space station? "We need to tell the others," he said, "and we need to run more tests." Within an hour, the entire science team was gathered in the main laboratory. Hyejin stood at her workstation with fresh samples from the structure. Daehyun had brought his quantum analysis equipment. Even Minho had come down from his quarters, though he looked annoyed at being disturbed. "Show them what you found," Taemin told Jiwon. The young researcher presented her findings nervously. Some of the other scientists looked skeptical, but they couldn't argue with her data. The numbers were clear. "This changes everything," Hyejin said. "If the structure is only 200 years old, then we're not looking at an extinct civilization. We're looking at something else entirely." "A hoax, perhaps," Minho suggested. "Some species playing games with us." "A hoax that's been floating in deep space for 2 centuries, Daehyun said. "That's a very long game to play." "I want to do a deeper analysis of the materials," Hyejin said. "With Jiwon's findings, I need to look at the molecular structure more carefully." Taemin nodded. "Do it. Daehyun, run quantum scans on the framework. Look for anything unusual, anything that doesn't match our initial assessment." The team worked through the day and into the night. Hyejin's findings came back first, and when she called Taemin to her station, her hands were shaking. "Look at this," she said, pointing to her screen. The display showed the molecular structure of the metal from the station's hull. At first glance, it looked like simple steel, but when she zoomed in to the nanometer scale, something else appeared. "Are those layers?" Taemin asked. "Nano-layers," Hyejin confirmed. "The metal isn't simple steel at all. It's a composite of dozens of different materials layered at the molecular level. This is incredibly sophisticated engineering. But our scans showed basic steel, because that's what we were meant to see. The outer layers are steel, common, unremarkable steel, but underneath there are materials I don't even recognize. This would require manufacturing precision far beyond what we initially thought." Taemin felt a chill run down his spine. "What about the welding marks?" Hyejin pulled up another image. "That's the really interesting part. The welds look crude and simple from normal observation, but when I examined them at the molecular level, they're perfect. Not just good, perfect. Every joint shows controlled fusion at the atomic level. There are no flaws, no weak points, no variation in the bonding. That's impossible with primitive welding technology." "Exactly. Someone made these welds look primitive while using technology more advanced than anything the Galactic Council currently has." Before Taemin could respond, Daehyun burst into the lab. His face was pale and he was breathing hard. "You need to see this," he said. "Right now." They followed him to his station where multiple screens displayed quantum analysis data. Daehyun pointed to a series of wave patterns. "I found evidence of controlled quantum tunneling in the framework," he said. "Do you understand what that means? Quantum tunneling. In a structure we thought was built by a pre-industrial civilization." "Explain it simply," Minho demanded. The Muar council representative had been quiet until now, but his expression showed concern. Quantum tunneling is when particles pass through barriers that should be impossible to pass through, Daehyun said. It's a phenomenon that requires incredibly advanced understanding of physics. Whoever built this structure wasn't just aware of quantum mechanics, they were using it in their construction. The framework contains pathways that allow energy to move through the structure in ways that shouldn't be possible. For what purpose? Taemin asked. I don't know yet, but it's deliberate. This isn't some accident or natural phenomenon. Someone designed this structure with quantum-level engineering and then disguised it to look primitive. The team stood in silence, trying to process what they had learned. Ji-won spoke up quietly. We should check the storage area again, she said. If they hid this level of sophistication in the structure itself, maybe they hid something else. Taemin assembled a team immediately. This time they took more advanced scanning equipment to the structure. They went directly to the large storage area they had examined on their first visit. For 2 hours, they scanned every centimeter of the room. Nothing appeared out of the ordinary. It was Ji-won who finally found it, almost by accident. She leaned against one of the walls, tired and frustrated, and felt a slight give in the metal. Doctor, she said, this panel moved. Hyejin brought her scanner over. There's a hollow space behind here, about 2 meters deep. They carefully removed the panel. It came away easily once they found the hidden releases. Behind it was a small chamber they had completely missed. And in the center of that chamber was a control panel. Unlike the rest of the structure, this panel didn't look primitive at all. It was sleek and clearly advanced, with a smooth black surface and subtle indicators that glowed softly in several colors. Well, Daehyun said, I guess we found what they were hiding. Taemin photographed the panel from every angle before touching anything. Then, carefully, he pressed his hand against the surface. The panel lit up immediately. Symbols appeared on the screen, flowing in patterns that seemed almost liquid. None of them recognized the language. Can you read any of this? Minho asked. No, Taemin admitted, but I know someone who might be able to help. Back on the ship, they brought in Somin, the linguistic expert. She was older than most of the crew, with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had spent her career studying dead languages and forgotten writing systems. Somin studied the recordings of the panel for several hours before calling them back. It's not a language, she said. Not in the traditional sense. It's mathematical. Universal concepts expressed through numbers and geometric patterns. Can you translate it? Taemin asked. Give me time, Somin said. Mathematics is the same everywhere, but the way different species express it can vary widely. I need to find the key to their notation system. While Somin worked on the translation, the rest of the team continued their analysis. Each new discovery led to more questions. The structure was a puzzle box, with every layer revealing something unexpected. Hyejin found microscopic sensors embedded throughout the hull. Daehyun discovered that the quantum tunneling pathways formed a network, like a nervous system running through the entire structure. Ji-won identified 17 different advanced materials, each one more sophisticated than the last. Whoever built this, Hyejin said during one of their team meetings, they wanted it to look primitive, but they also wanted someone to eventually figure out the truth. They left clues, small things that don't make sense until you look closer. But why? Minho asked. The question everyone had been thinking. Maybe Somin's translation will tell us, Taemin said. 3 days later, Somin called them all to her office. She looked exhausted but satisfied. I've broken the code, she said. And you're not going to believe what it says,